I can't believe it's been 10 years since this device came out. Now, on this journey to live a more digitally minimalistic life, I've been on the search for the ideal dumb phone. Recently, I've been using the BlackBerry Q10 as my daily driver because it's the perfect form factor. It calls, it texts, and it does exactly what I need it to do. But recently, many people have been recommending the BlackBerry Classic or BlackBerry Q20. So I wanted to get my hands on this device and test it out to see if there are really any big differences, besides the size, of course, of the BlackBerry Q10 and the BlackBerry Q20 in 2024. Now, before testing this device, I had to get the device. I actually purchased this device on eBay for 20 euros. Unfortunately, when I got the device, the SIM tray no longer worked, so I had to have it replaced, and this cost me 25 euros. So all in all, I spent 45 euros on this device, compared to my Q10, which I had bought used on eBay as well, for 42 euros. So more or less, these devices cost about the same if you're looking on the used market. Now, after I got my BlackBerry Classic or Q20 fixed and ready to go, I decided to use it as my daily driver and compare it to my previous driver, my Q10. Of course, the biggest change is the larger screen. It's a 3.5-inch display compared to my Q10, which was only a 3.1. But also you have a physical control deck, which is fantastic for making calls and using the physical trackpad. Another bonus is the keyboard is also larger, so if you have bigger hands, this device may work better for you. Other than that, the BlackBerry OS or BlackBerry 10 is about the same. Both devices upgraded to 10.3, I believe, and I think maybe the BlackBerry Classic went a little bit further with 10.3.2. But more or less, they have the same default apps and the same functionality. The cameras are exactly the same, so I didn't see any differences. To go into more detail about these devices, I'm going to talk about some minuscule differences. Now, if you're looking at both devices to use potentially as a dumb phone, this will come down to preference. And my preference might be clear, but I want to try to be as objective as possible when discussing these differences. Now, the first difference I noticed was actually the weight of the devices. The BlackBerry Classic is a bit heavier, which may make it feel more premium in the hands. The device is composed of metal and plastic, and of course the screen is Gorilla Glass 3, which makes it a bit more durable than the Q10. Standing back and looking at these devices, the BlackBerry Q20 has a timeless design. Even in 2024, this device looks fantastic. Most people wouldn't know this phone came out 10 years ago, and I think the design still holds strong today. Whereas my Q10 looks a little bit dated, but I think it's because of the color choice. I mean, I was using a rubberized carbon black finish, so it looks a little bit older, but it still feels great in the hands. As far as the grip is concerned, I find that the Q20 is a textured back, so it's a bit of a different feel in the hands. I like the rubberized back a little bit more for the Q10, but again, this is just a preference thing. One big difference I noticed straight away is when I turned on the device, the display was quite a bit different than my Q10. This is because the BlackBerry Q20 has an LCD screen, whereas the BlackBerry Q10 has an AMOLED screen. Now, these differences are slight, but as somebody who is visually impaired, I noticed them straight away. I have a big difficulty seeing LCD screens compared to OLED or AMOLED screens. This is because the blacks are a bit blacker on the AMOLED or OLEDs, and the brightness of the screens are quite a bit different. If you compare these devices side by side, you can see that the AMOLED screen is a bit brighter, and the LCD screen is a little bit dimmer, and I noticed that the text isn't as detailed or easy to see. I mean, these differences are quite slight, but as somebody who is visually impaired, I have a difficulty with LCD screens because they are backlit, and this tends to bother my eyes. In most modern devices, I'm fixing this by putting a matte screen protector over my device, and this really helps reduce that reflection from the backlight. The benefit of the Q20 is the larger display. So having 3.5 inches makes a huge difference, especially for someone like myself who's going to make the font quite a bit bigger than the average user. I find that I can see text a lot easier. I can increase the font from a 12 point to a 14, and it doesn't really impact my usage of the device. This I found as a great plus. Also, the keyboard is a bit larger on the Q20, so it's easier to see the backlit keys. Now I'm going to get into very nitpicky details that I found with the Q20 versus the Q10. Unfortunately, the Q20 does not have a removable back, which does not allow you to access the device as far as removing and replacing the battery or accessing, for example, the SIM card tray or the micro SD tray. You'll need to use a SIM removal tool to insert your SIM card as well as your micro SD card, which is fine because most modern devices are like this, but I like that my Q10 allows me to access the device. I'm somebody who removes and puts my SD card in different devices quite often because I keep my music library on there. So I'm switching to my MP3 player, I'm switching to a phone, and I'm switching to maybe a tablet. I want to be able to move this micro SD card to different devices quickly. And it's a bit of a pain when you have to use the SIM card tool to eject each time. You might not have the tool on hand, or you just want to quickly remove it and put it into another device while you're on the go. So that's just one detail that I don't like, but it does give the device an air of being modern for its time. I mean, the Q20 came out in 2014, which is crazy. This device is 10 years old and still looks fantastic and has a modern appeal. I mean, you're using a nano SIM, whereas the Q10 is a micro SIM. So with 1 year of the devices being released from each other, there's quite a huge difference of the feeling. Even though the devices came out a year apart, I feel that the Q20 feels a bit more premium and it feels a bit more timeless and modern. I think this device would be a great dumb phone option for somebody who wants something that doesn't stick out as much as being an old phone. Now, one small detail, or big detail if you look at the device is quite a bit larger than the Q10. I found this a bit of a downside because I like to put my device in my pocket. The idea for me having a dumb phone is a dumb phone that I can stick in my pocket and go easily. Now, as a woman, we traditionally have a lot smaller pockets than men, so this might not be a detail that men might notice, but I know as a woman, the Q20 is a bit large for my front pocket especially. I find that the Q10 slips in a lot easier and is a lot less noticeable, but this again is a small detail, but worth noting. One thing I really like about BlackBerry 10 devices in general is the default apps it comes with, especially the music application. I find myself using this as the perfect MP3 player. It's easy for me to see, it's easy for me to create playlists, and I find that it just works quite well. So I find that the Q10 as well as the Q20 are excellent devices if somebody's looking for a music player in their device. It's just so user-friendly. Unfortunately, my Q10 and Q20 have this similar problem of always wanting to continue the setup process. No matter what I do, I go through the setup process, connecting my device to my mobile network as well as my Wi-Fi. It still gets stuck in this setup loop. So I'll tend to receive a notification to finish the setup of my device all day, every day. On my Q10, I noticed that eventually if I snooze this feature, it goes away. But on the Q20, I've been using it for the past week or so, and this notification just does not go away. If this is something that might annoy you, I would not get the device. But for me, I kind of like the LCD flash. It's the old version of the dopamine hit from a notification, and it doesn't bother me so much. But if you have the sound on, you will hear the notification and it will keep prompting you to complete the setup. Maybe there's a workaround for this. If anyone knows, I'm open to hearing this. But since my devices were both factory reset, this just continues over and over. I actually have an older BlackBerry 10 that wasn't factory reset. It was an old phone of mine, and it doesn't go through this setup loop because it was never factory reset and it's still technically connected and hasn't been updated. So it does work if you have older phones that haven't been reset, but since both of my newer refurbished or used phones have been reset, I'm stuck in this finish your setup loop. Overall, in 2024, I think both of these devices work excellent as a dumb phone. They connect to 4G, they do the calling and texting perfectly. You get all of your notifications that work through the BlackBerry Hub, so primarily text messages and calls, which is still convenient. You can connect to the default browser. I cannot connect to BlackBerry World, of course, or even the Amazon App Store because you need to verify the CAPTCHA, which does not work with this version of the browser. But other than that, the camera is fantastic for the time. I mean, it's a 2 megapixel front-facing camera, so that one's not so great. But the rear-facing camera is 8 megapixels, and I find that the quality's not bad. If you're just taking a photo on the go or a video, it's good enough. It's a retro feel, of course, but it's good enough. Will I continue using the BlackBerry Q10? I think yes. I think both of these devices have a time and place. If I want to dress up my dumb phone a little bit, I will take the Q20 out. Whereas I think still my daily driver will be my preferred Q10. I know it's smaller and it's more difficult to see as somebody who's visually impaired, but I just like the form factor and I think it's easier for me to take on the go. Are you still using a BlackBerry in 2024? I would really like to hear your thoughts on using a BlackBerry nowadays since it's getting more and more difficult, but I still love BlackBerry more than any other device. And I can't wait to go over my other devices that I have on hand. Thank you so much for watching and see you soon.